Hey guys, what's up? It's James. I'm SMC in Colorado. I'm feeling pretty good today. I just got done with a good program looking at fear and the possibility of developing fearlessness within Shambhala, the organization that I'm studying with. There's a concept of something called a cocoon, where we tend to wrap ourselves in habitual tendencies that and that we miss out on the ability to use our full intelligence and wisdom in every moment. Even though we already have intelligence and wisdom in every moment, we lose contact with that because perhaps as we're growing up, we learn different strategies and habitual ways of getting the things that we want, and then we stick with those, and then we have a hard time reconnecting with a sense of unconditionality, or being able to do things with just a sense of genuineness, or a sense of reality, or a sense of just connecting with something that's has more realness to it. And so I was really inspired by this class, and it kind of connected with my own studies in nonviolent communication and empathy and self-love and things like that. And I just wanted to present some of those ideas to you today and try to make some connections that might help. All right, so here we go. All right, so I just want to start out with the view of this, why I'm making this video, why I'm wanting to talk about these particular topics. And it's because I think that there's some views currently about psychology and also how the world is currently functioning that are worth looking at. And I personally, I've defined three kind of commonly held beliefs, three things that I notice, not necessarily the entire picture, but three very pervasive things that I notice that cause people to have a sense of doubt about who they are. I'm not saying that these things are right or wrong, but I'm just saying that sometimes, at least for me, they can definitely cause a sense of doubt. And so the first one has to do with psychology, reading books about evolution, like The Selfish Gene, or even about sexuality, like Sperm Wars. I've read a few of these books, Charles Darwin, these kind of things. It talks about genetic determinism. I think Freud talks about this too, that we are determined by our genes, and that our behavior is determined by our grandparents and the genes that they passed on to us. And that might be true. I'm a tall person. My grandfather was a tall person. Sometimes people talk about trends of alcoholism running in families, or different things, different traits or attitudes that are passed down, maybe not just genetically, but also in terms of the environment. So these things are passed on, right? And we have a common belief that we've inherited these things, and that we're predisposed without control over these effects in our life. So that's one part. And then there's also the idea of that our brains are wired to be more negative than positive. That inherently we seek sources of high reward for low effort. And reading modern psychology books, they make a really compelling argument about this, is that if we didn't have a more negative based mindset, then we wouldn't be able to escape from danger, and we wouldn't be able to pass our genes on. And that so our brains are naturally have an older operating system than our current social paradigm does. And that we're still kind of caught in the past, caught in a brain that has not yet evolved, and is still the same brain that cavemen and our ancestors had when they needed to hunt, and to the survival of the fittest and things like that. And like I said before, I'm not necessarily saying that this is wrong, and that actually our brains are evolved or something, but I'm just saying that it might be interesting to kind of look at the view of that, and to see maybe we could just introduce more positive beliefs that would be more empowering to us. So that's the first thing, is kind of like genetics and modern psychology. The second thing has to do with the speed of our modern culture, and we can really see this in terms of cell phones and in terms of how work is done in the world today, how the world is much more connected than it used to be, these kind of themes. And again, I'm not saying that this is not true. It's we can definitely see that people are moving a little bit faster, they're a little bit more insecure, they're less connected than they used to be, for sure, humanly connected. And so it's kind of looking at that and saying, is this negative, or what can be the positive aspect of this? The third thing kind of has to do with our attitude towards psychology and in terms of mental illness. And I think that especially in America, but in many places, but especially in America, there's this culture of fear that regards illness and the fear of going crazy. And this is like actually a really important point to make. Some Buddhists would say that we are already crazy, that our extreme grasping, our extreme attachment to outcomes, our desire that we take to be such just a normal part of our life is actually madness. And I read a book recently. You can read a book called Transcending Madness by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche if you're interested in that view. And just a common view that's held within Shambhala and within Buddhism is that, or at least in Shambhala, is this idea of basic goodness, and that we become disconnected from that sense, and the sense of trying to reconnect with it. And in order to do that, having to work with the difficult emotions like fear, aggression, and emotion and passion, rather than trying to escape from them, as what we actually often try to do, is that we have discomfort and we try to escape from these emotions. Rather, it's more about trying to look at them in a different way. And that's why I really want to make this point about these kind of three commonly held beliefs, is about genetic determinism and the speed of our culture, and also this kind of pill-popping neurosis, fear of going crazy that people have. And just to identify those things and say, by looking at the problem, are we actually creating a solution? Or are we just creating more fear and more insecurity and more a sense of being excluded from the group, and more of a sense of not being connected to ourselves and to the earth, and then also being connected to others? How could we actually change that view so that we could look at those particular moments and find a way to make those good situations for ourselves? And so that's kind of like what I was inspired about to talk about, because I think that that it's easy to point out these particular faults, but it's much more fun, much more creative, much more opportunity for confidence and even fearlessness to work instead on the view of being inherently good, being basically good, having everything that we already need, and looking at our emotions in a different way that allows us to sharpen our intelligence and to connect with the world in a more positive and in a way that helps us connect with our humanity. So I just wanted to introduce the view first, that this is kind of about looking at things in a different way, and then I'm going to kind of go into some strategies that can help to connect with how to do that. So I'll do that next. So in particular, I want to talk about this this thing of connecting with oneself. And I think that this is something that in today's world we rarely take the time to do. And I certainly am still warming up to it. I'm still learning how to do this. For me, it's kind of a thing of like, well, how do I live my life in a way that allows me to be honest with myself and genuine with myself? How do I live my life in a way that allows me to feel confident in the ways I feel, and to understand how I can use those feelings to connect with the world? So often it seems that we have this kind of trickling pattern of reactivity as well as codependency, where instead of trying to work on ourselves, we try to work on other people. It's easier to notice and project onto other people their faults when what we might be identifying are actually what we think are our own faults. We see someone acting in a certain way, and because we haven't connected with ourselves, because we haven't made friends with ourselves, we see that person as an enemy because they remind us of things that we don't like about ourselves. And I think that the path of meditation is really the one genuine and honest way to do this, because what happens is you sit there and you sit there and you sit there, and thoughts come and they go. And after a while, a sense of familiarity develops. I'm becoming familiar with my thought patterns and my emotional patterns, and by becoming familiar with those things, when they arise again, I can recognize them as something that is inherently part of who I am. And having that attitude allows me to be friendly towards those things rather than to reject them. I think that a lot of what I'm talking about in this video is based on meditative insight, so it's important, if you want to really understand these things, is to learn how to meditate and learn how to begin to create space and patience and friendliness towards yourself. And that's what I think I've really been trying to do the most, is at least lately, is trying to practice this way of being able to feel into my human situation, feel my own humanity, and to work with this basis of just being a human being and accepting that. And so here's kind of the process, if you may, that I go through to do this, and it's part of some meditative training. You might not understand this so well, or it might be hard to connect to in reality without meditative training. So I really would recommend that if you're interested in this, to kind of pursue meditation as a way to create the space in which this practice can occur. So here we go. So I thought I would just kind of do this on the spot. Just to kind of notice how I feel, and to notice that when difficult situations arise. Right now I feel a little bit nervous because I'm making a video blog and I'm presenting fresh ideas that have not been practiced. This is my first run. I have a little bit more confidence because I did some writing, and I was able to write down my ideas before I did this, so I have kind of a general guideline of progression, but at the same time a lot of this is fresh thought, and it's putting me on an edge where I can feel some tension, slight amount of tension in my stomach, and a slight amount of tension in my legs. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of connecting with the bodily sensations of what's going on for me in this moment. And actually, this is where things could become very interesting for me, is that I could feel those things without the storyline that I'm nervous, and without the storyline that I'm nervous because I'm shooting a video blog. Now, that might be what's made me nervous, but certainly you could find someone else who would be very confident in shooting a video blog. And even myself, sometimes I'm very confident in doing this. So it's not to say that just because I feel this way, everyone is going to feel the same way, But this is my unique interpretation of how I'm approaching this situation, is to feel some sense of energy. Energy. And rather than concept of fear, energy. Sensation. Energy, yeah. And kind of the trick is that when I feel that energy, to not think about what it means or where it's coming from, but just to feel into my stomach directly. and to kind of feel that energy, to feel that energy in my body, and just to recognize it without a storyline, without reason, just to directly perceive it, to directly touch it, and to remain there without the storyline. So what began to happen in those moments that just passed were that I acknowledged what was going on for me. I felt it directly, and because I felt it directly, my experience of what I'm doing right now began to relax. It began to have a feeling of nativeness. I even began to invite those feelings, to feel them completely. And by doing that, it's almost a feeling of inhabiting my space. That this feeling that I have right now is an expression of how my mind is interacting with the space around me, and the tremendous wisdom that has arisen based on my experience. So, I mean, perhaps we could say one of a few things. For one, I'm standing near people who are working. They probably can't hear me, but it's just in my mind that they might be able to hear me. There's other wisdom in this situation. I'm standing on land that is not a path. I'm standing in an area that I could be damaging by standing here, I am shooting a video blog and talking about things that are very important to me, and that feels vulnerable. So these different aspects kind of can create this tension, this feeling of insecurity. And so what the practice of just directly feeling those things does is that it allows me to inhabit the space, and it allows me to kind of take ownership of the space in my own mind. I don't have to, yell out to people. I don't have to make a big deal out of it. I don't have to show off. I don't have to prove myself. It's much more genuine. It's much more touching into my direct experience of my life. Because when I take away the concept, and I feel that those emotions which are genuine, then the space that allows me to realize that everything's okay. And within that, I create a sense of home. That I am at home within my body. I am at home on this earth. I am at home. And I don't need a roof. I don't need anything. That just by being a human being, I'm at home on this earth. And to feel that creates a sense of abundance that allows me to very naturally relate with the world. And this is kind of the idea of fear turning into fearlessness. So rather than trying to escape from my fear or trying to prove myself, I'm feeling the fear directly. They even say in Buddhism that the Buddha sits in the mouth of fear, the mouth of the tiger that's about to eat him. He sits there. And the idea is that because I have a feeling of anxiety, because I have a feeling of fear, I have intelligence. I have wisdom. There's a reason why I feel this way. And rather than trying to strategize about how to remove that feeling, I can instead relate to that feeling in a different way that doesn't label it as a story or as something that's wrong with me. Which is kind of like this view of like people being crazy, or genetic determinism, or the world being too fast. That I might become crazy, because I have this feeling. but rather having a sense of kindness towards that, and looking at that feeling and saying, or not saying anything, just directly perceiving it. Inviting it to me. Remaining with it, not going back to a strategy, not going back to a reason or label. And I gotta tell you guys, this is the one of the, for me, without meditative experience, without the ability to come back, without developing the friendliness that I won't always be able to come back, I wouldn't be able to actually remain in a space to consciously be able to control my mind for 10, 20, 30 seconds where I am committed to just staying with the feeling. And training that in meditation is what allows me to do that. So when I sit for an hour and thoughts come and they go, and thoughts come and they go, and I practice applying my mind to my breath, I can do the same thing in life by applying my mind to my feelings. And by doing that, creating that sense of home, that sense of abundance. So I think that when challenging situations arise, and situations that make us stressed or anxious, that this can be a really helpful exercise in order to slow down and to trust ourselves and to work with that situation in a way that allows us to develop clarity, insight, wisdom, and peace, and abundance and intelligence, and then to use, and then out of that, out of just creating that sense of home, like I'm fine, everything's fine, then if I want to, only if I want to, only if I think it's right, only now that I'm not operating from my sense of reactivity, but rather responsiveness, the ability to respond to a situation, I can use my intelligence to connect to that situation and to seek a better outcome. But within that intelligence, there's also the possibility that I don't have all the information yet, and I still feel a little insecure, but I realize at least that I need to seek that information in order to completely understand what's going on. So that's what I'm about to talk to you next. That's skills of NVC, nonviolent communication, and empathetic listening skills. So we'll go into that next. Okay, so at this point we're talking about strategies. We're talking about ways to use our intelligence, not to use our emotions, not to use our reactivity as a way to lay trips on people. At this point, we've already reached a sense of abundance. We've already come to peace with what's going on. We have the freedom to choose, which is an important concept. We have the freedom to choose our response and to use our intelligence to work with the world. Now, I think that maybe there might be kind of a common complaint like, well, isn't that manipulative? Well, I think that that's a thing of personal discovery, personal contemplation. I think that for me, just the very sense that I'm starting from a place of abundance and using my intelligence is much better than me reactively using power trips, emotions, and just overall weird feelings in order to try to have people vaguely understand what I need, but not really, and then to have an issue because of that. It's almost better to have the tools in the tool belt that one could use in certain situations to meet the needs of myself and to meet the needs of others, and to work towards that vision of creating abundance first within myself and then expanding that into abundance for others. And I guess you could say that that we have all sorts of strategies already about how to do this. And it really depends on the person's experience and their style and the way that they do things that could allow them to respond to a situation in different ways. People have different strengths. They have different interpersonal strengths. I'm not applying just a one way of doing things. I'm applying the way that I like to do things, which is a style of listening and seeking to get needs met. And this is based on the Nonviolent Communication book by Marshall Rosenberg, and also excerpts from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Really, 2 really great books that I really enjoyed, and they present strategies, 2 or 3 different strategies about how to work in situations. So I'll talk about that. So yeah, let's start with nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication has a quality of getting the basic human needs and some of the more the bigger needs that we have as humans, and seeking to create a connection of humanity with another person, and out of that, trusting in other people, trusting in ourselves, trusting in that what we have to say and what we need and what we're trying to express is good and belongs on this earth, and that other people, by hearing that, will be receptive to that. So the basic NVC process involves 4 steps: observation, feelings, needs, and request. And there's a few points about each of these things, and so I'd like to go through that with you. Now, I like to start with first contemplating in a situation what it is that I am feeling, because by doing that, I can return to the practice that I just described to you, the practice of just feeling the difficult emotion directly and just staying there, and just staying there, and just staying there, and making peace with that emotion and using it as a way to become more present to the situation. So I start with feeling. So I say, what am I feeling right now? And I'm like, I feel mad at this person. I feel like this person doesn't understand me. I feel that things are fucked up. This is not right. Or I feel. So the kind of the first impulse that comes to me is actually an impulse of aggression sometimes, and this is starting off on the wrong foot. It's okay to maybe have these thoughts. I mean, we've been conditioned for a very long time, but at the same time, how we actually respond and how we actually communicate with the world needs to have maybe a more expansive view. So instead of when I notice that I'm having these aggressive thoughts, I say, now wait a minute, this isn't quite how I feel. Because in MVC, what we talk about is that we don't ever say I feel that or I feel like. We say I feel emotion, and whatever that emotion is more genuine than saying I feel like you are manipulating me. See, that's judging the other person. That's not actually a feeling. That's adding a judgment to the situation that is going to make the other person feel threatened, and it's going to create this loop of defensiveness that won't solve the problem. So instead, we actually have to start with something that's a little bit scary, and that is to engage in vulnerability. So in this situation, I often like to think of the more human feelings behind that. I feel insecure. I feel confused. I feel sad. I feel tender. Another important point is not to say I feel attacked or I feel manipulated or I feel when you add kind of that tense of like I feel that something's coming from you to me and that I'm being affected by this, it still has this quality of that I forgot what I was trying to say. It still has this quality that we're judging the other person. We're judging the other person as attacking us, the other person as a villain, the other person as someone who's trying to hurt us. And by doing that, again, we're creating defensive reactive patterns. So instead, it's much better just to start very simple, just very, very simple. I feel kind of insecure right now. Okay, so I don't actually say that yet. I acknowledge that. And then I think, what are my needs in this situation? I feel this way. I notice that I feel this way. But what am I actually needing that would help me with this emotion? Oftentimes I actually find that I might not really need anything. I might just need to give myself some kindness and say, hey, it's okay that I feel this way. Maybe this person reminds me of someone that hurt me in the past. But by just identifying my needs and what I need, I can easily see whether or not I'm projecting onto the other person as a villain or a friend or as anything. Because then I can see, well, actually, I don't need anything from this person. I don't need them to change. They're fine as they are. I realize that. But I still get a strange feeling from them, and that's something that I can just relax with, because I realize that I don't need them to be different, or I don't need anything from them. You have to be careful though, because this could also be a way of copying out of situations and saying, "Well, I don't have any needs right now. It's okay. I'll just I'll just go to the side." But even when you do that, if the story keeps on going, the emotions keep on going. It's an invitation to look deeper and to say, what do I really need right now? And it might be something very vulnerable. Like, I need to ask this person for empathy. Like, I haven't been able to do that yet myself, but I'm inspired by that idea. If we do notice a behavior that is bothering us, and we want to relate with the other person in a way that is going to create synergy or is going to create something, then we need to speak in terms of behavior. We need to make qualifiable behaviors about what is it about this situation that is making me feel insecure. And so I can notice that, for example, some people speak louder than other people. I speak quite softly. And sometimes when people are speaking louder than other people, it can make me feel insecure, because I become afraid that that I won't be understood, that I won't be able to express my opinion, or that they won't listen to me. And so, rather than actually saying that you're speaking too loudly, I could say your tone of voice for me is too loud. I'm observing that the way you're speaking has, for me, a loud tone of voice, and that makes me feel insecure. I have a need to express my own opinion to you, and I'm wondering if the request is, would you be willing to listen to what I have to say and to have a conversation with me about this, about my idea. And that's kind of like a nice cookie cutter process, if everything was ideal. And I mean, at Shambhala centers, I often find that people, as soon as I begin to talk about I feel insecure, and a lot of people will still do this, like some people will think that you're manipulating them, and that's a hard thing to deal with. But a lot of times when you start out with that vulnerability, you start off on the foot of vulnerability, that creates a situation that gets people's attention like that. And it's almost like their humanity was always there, but they just never had the chance, or they haven't been given a vulnerable statement from someone where, like, people want to connect, I think, like people want to connect with each other. They want to even surrender, but they can't, because everyone is laying ego trips on each other. Everyone is trying to outsmart the other person, or do better than the other person, or show the other person how they're wrong and they're right, and things like that. And because of that, it creates walls of defensiveness. So you have to realize that a lot of people that you might talk to about this might not be ready, or might not even notice that what you're doing is something that's very genuine. And that's tough. You can start with empathy sometimes if you notice that the other person isn't ready to have that kind of conversation with you. You can listen to them. You can hear what they're saying and reflectively listen back to them. And that's another thing that people aren't used to, is being listened to. They're used to having people ignore what they're saying, having people wait to explain themselves, having people wait until they finish talking so they can start talking, and just no conversation actually taking place. So, like, actually an art of conversation is being able to actively listen to people and to repeat back to them what they're saying, and to even infer and try to guess what emotions they might be feeling. So if, like, someone came into me and they're like, oh, I'm really upset, this is happening and this is happening, already that's a statement of vulnerability. They might be actually looking for empathy in that moment. And so then, rather than saying, oh, you know what, you should do this, you should go talk to that person and just tell them how you feel, and coming in with the NVC strategy, instead of doing that, coming in and saying, oh, so you feel upset because this person did this to you and you wanted to feel more validated in that situation. So even like using the MVC as a way to give advice to people is not helpful. Rather, it's better to just jump right into the process and to automatically just go to, oh, so you're feeling this way because of this, and then they feel understood. There's a space of objectivity that's created where they're able to see clearly what's going on in their lives. If you've ever done journaling, you kind of get this sense where you read your own words and you see from a distance, you're able to step back and use your intelligence. So just as before, it's like you're using your intelligence to relate to the situation rather than your emotions. So what you're doing for that person by mirroring back to them their feelings is you're giving them the ability to directly perceive what's going on in their lives and to have a sense of intelligence and abundance. And you're giving them objectivity. You're giving them your ability to watch. Instead of them being able to watch themselves and to feel into themselves, you're actually giving them a sense of mind that is watching and perceiving what's going on in their life. Maybe they can't do it, or they don't know how to, or they haven't learned to do that. So just by listening to another person, you give them the space to begin to become abundant and to have a sense of peace and a sense of intelligence about how to deal with the situation that is going on in their life. And then moving on from that, because they feel more abundant, they're going to be more likely to want to hear the other person's side of it, or to even hear what's going on for the other person, because they've developed this abundance. And now all of a sudden they might feel like, oh, I understand things. I have a sense of clarity. It's kind of like a, oh, and I experienced this a lot. Today I gave a gift to one of my teachers and I spilled my water all over the table while I was doing it. I was so embarrassed. I'm like, oh man, I hope that they don't think that the gift is tainted because I spilled water while giving it to them. I hope that they still respect it and things like that. I just had this ongoing story going on in my head. I'm like, I want to get away from this. I want to return to my sense of abundance, but I'm really worried about this. And someone just asked me, hey, how are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I feel really insecure about this. And they're like, they didn't give me the MVC thing, but they said, oh, so I think you'll be okay. I think that they'll be fine. But just kind of having someone to like hear that allowed me to take a step back and just relax. Kind of move on. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the world isn't really used. The speed of our culture is not used to people who are genuinely interested in helping other people. And actually everyone is interested in this, but they just don't have maybe they haven't really learned how to do it. They haven't found strategies about how to relate to themselves, how to relate to their own emotions. Because I think that once you learn how to relate to your own emotions and relate to your own self, you realize that other people need empathy. Just as I need empathy towards myself, I need to be friendly towards myself, I need to do these things to take care of myself. Other people need these things too, and I can directly, because I'm used to doing it with myself, I can apply those techniques and verbally give those to other people. So it's good to know this, like feelings, needs, observations, requests, or observations, feelings, needs, request. It's good to know that, but not always are people going to be ready to have that conversation with you. So it's kind of like meeting them where they're at. Like this person definitely doesn't look like he's ready to have a heart-to-heart conversation with me. There's probably something going on in his or her life right now that needs resolution and needs clarity. So if it arises that I can offer, some empathy, it might really help this person to calm down. And then from that building of that emotional bank account, putting together, seeking first to understand rather than be understood, that's Stephen Covey, and emotional bank accounts also Stephen Covey, that I begin to create a space in which genuine communication can take place. And for me, it's like that's like one of the most rewarding things in my life right now, is when this connection can be made, and when I'm not trying to lay trips on other people, when I'm not trying to prove myself or try to fix another person, but really just connect to the humanity of what's going on, what they need, why they feel a certain way. that sense of movement from heart to heart, connecting heart to heart rather than mind to mind, and just acknowledging, like, wow, like we're all suffering, like we're all having a tough time in life, and life can be really difficult sometimes, and just acknowledging that and not thinking that there's a cure-all, that things can be difficult for people, and that rather than trying to fix that situation on the spot, rather than trying to alleviate my own discomfort with that situation, it's rather feel directly those feelings and use them as a way to focus myself and invite me into the conversation and to pull me into creating a connection with the person that is more genuine and has more of a heart-to-heart quality to it. And out of that space, it can be like, yeah, man, that's really tough. And in my mind, all these strategies running, like, oh, I should do this, I should say this, but, just in the moment, just, realizing like, yeah, that's really tough right now. I'm sorry, and leaving lots of space. Just so that the person feels acknowledged. And within that, there's just something beautiful there. And it's one of the, it's these moments that I think really make my life worthwhile, and why I'm so inspired to make these videos and to speak about this, because it's something that I think that we all want to really help each other, that we all want to help each other. We all understand suffering. We all understand that either we're suffering or someone else is suffering, and that we all can connect to that shared experience of suffering. And whether we're having our own suffering relieved or we're relieving the suffering of another person, it really doesn't matter. In fact, it can sometimes be even more gratifying to help another person. And so we jump to situations where we immediately try to help other people. Like we try to have sex with people. We try to give people advice. We try to read our autobiography to people. We do all these things because we know that if we could just help them, and if we could have that direct experience of helping them, that to overcome their suffering, that there's a good feeling there, But at the same time, if we don't learn how to first relate with our own suffering and how to feel abundant, then what we're actually engaging in is aggression and advice giving and things that do not help the situation. And so I think that it's really worth our time to learn how to relate to ourselves, and to not look at it as something that's selfish, but rather as something that's genuine and something that can help us to create a connection with ourselves, and then we can connect with other people. And so, and then maybe using some communication styles of, nonviolent communication to make a request. But if those requests aren't ready to be received, to focus on empathy, to focus on understanding, to focus on what's going on. But again, to do that from a place of abundance where we've taken care of our own suffering, and that, suffering pervades everywhere. Suffering is a really tough thing that we all deal with, like I said. And just being able to acknowledge that, and to be able to acknowledge that suffering is part of humanity, part of our human condition, we're able to have much more space and ability to relate to other people in a genuine way. So anyway, I'll leave you guys with that. I'm definitely going to continue to explore this for myself. I might make more videos or I might not. But I appreciate you guys tuning in today, and I'll see you next week.